What is up, everybody? Welcome to Wine Talk with Tesh. It's your boy, Tesh. And I'm very excited to have you guys today because we are drinking some very, very unique wines. Oh, hang on. I got feedback. Let's try this. Okay, there we go. You good there, Drew?
Yeah, I turned my volume off beforehand.
Oh, good job. Good way to do exactly what I had advised you to do. Unlike me. Real quick, shout outs. I want to give a shout out to Drew, obviously, who is, in my head, the sexiest beard in Sacramento. That dude, like, I shaved because I was like, my peach fuzz is just not gonna, I just gotta go full baby face when we got Drew on the show. So shout out to Drew for providing these amazing wines. For those of you who picked it up and are participating tonight, you're in for a treat. These are very unique wines. They're very outside of the realm, I think, of what we would consider quote unquote normal. Although I did pick wines specifically that I think were good transition wines, right? So like if you just went full Georgian, I think that would be kind of rough for a lot of people. So we made it a point to pick some wines that would appeal to everyone. Another shout out, Jordan is behind the scenes as always. Check him out.
Hello.
At Home Bar Pro. Check him out. Check out his videos. He recently made a video for an eggnog that I am dying to make for myself.
So good.
So it is so good. It looks so good, I should say, and I can't wait to make it for myself. So, is Drew up on the screen now?
Yeah.
All right, beautiful. So everybody can see that beautiful, sexy beard. Drew, who the hell are you and why are you here? Why are you joining us today?
Oh man, I think the authorities are still looking into that exact question. But yeah, so my name's Drew Garrison, and I work for a company called JVS Imports, and basically what we are is there's a group of guys and some gals that got together who just really enjoy spirits and different wines, and really more so esoteric stuff. That's really our wheelhouse. It's like anytime someone's looking for something weird, they usually call me first. They're like, hey, you probably have this, right? Or if I don't have it, I know who does. And so with our portfolio, that ranges from Japanese whiskeys to scotches to single malts from Israel, and then all the way into this really beautiful world of like Eastern European wines. So Georgia obviously is one that we're going to be discussing tonight, but we also have stuff from Armenia, Croatia. We have some stuff from Turkey, and kind of the list goes on and on. And so for my own personal journey, like I've always been attracted to like really weird stuff. Like I just like to be into whatever nobody else is into. It goes back to my days of not liking Michael Jordan during the 90s when everyone else did, because I was just like, I know I couldn't be that guy. So that's extended into my career now, where I gravitate towards these things. And when it comes to Georgian wine, it has like this excessively rich and in-depth history with so many twists and turns. And then when you finally get to this point now, you end up going down this rabbit hole where you're just drinking the weirdest shit you've ever had in your life, and
sure.
it's super fun. And I think it's one of my favorite things to do, and Tesh, you were another example of this, is like to take someone who has this infinite knowledge of wine and then just break your brains with it, because like none of it makes sense. And then to get like, the level of expertise that you have and some of the other people that I've shared it with, it's like, it's really cool to kind of see something where you're like, I have no idea how to talk about this, or what to do with it outside of the fact it tastes good, so that's really that's what I do, and I try to find cool stuff, and Georgian wine is absolutely the next frontier for me. I've loved everything I've learned so far. I'm still continuing to learn, and always will. But yeah, that's who I am. That's where we're at, and let's talk some Georgian wine.
Yo, okay, so hang on. We got to take a time out here, because when you say that you were not a fan of Jordan, does that mean that like you didn't understand that like the appreciation that you should? Okay, because listen, look, like in the early 90s, we're totally getting way off bar right from the get-go here, and I'm okay with that, all right?
Yeah.
I was a huge fan of the Orlando Magic, okay? Mm-hmm. It was an incredible team. You had Anthony Hardaway, Shaquille O'Neal, obviously, Horace Grant, Nick Anderson. It was an incredible team, and they were so much fun to watch, okay? But like, dude, Jordan.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, it's not like I didn't appreciate his greatness or anything like that. But growing up in the Sacramento area, without hesitation, it was like, Drew, who's your favorite player? Mitch Richmond, and it was just like I couldn't say it faster. And in fact, I met him as an adult, like 6 or 7 years ago. And the first interaction that we had, I couldn't talk. I was so overwhelmed. Like young Drew took over, I couldn't speak. So then a friend of mine was with me. She did all the speaking for me. And then I saw Mitch a little bit later, and he could not have been cooler. He was great about it. And then I saw him later that day and was actually able to get words out and converse with him. But I fangirled so hard I couldn't talk. So for me, it was about rooting for the local team, who for the most part was awful. And everybody was wearing Jordan jerseys, had Jordan posters and stuff like that. And I was like, yeah, but he's not The Rock, so yeah, that's just me being contentious my entire life.
The Rock is like on a whole different planet, dude.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's fair enough. Fair enough. And I respect that you actually like stuck with like you're like, no, like this is my favorite player because he's a local dude and I want to support him.
Yeah.
That's dope. It's dope that you had an answer, right? And not just like anti, just to be anti, you know what I mean?
Well, I think a lot of people like they look at me and they're like, oh, Drew hates this, Drew hates that. I was like, I have reasons for all of these things. Like, this isn't just blind hatred, I'm very methodical.
We won't talk about bourbon, okay?
Yeah, I'm very methodical about it. And it's like, and I can tell you all the things I do like about those things, but at the most part, it's like, I get boxed into these things and people like ask me questions and I give, thoughtful answers. They're like, oh, I guess that makes total sense. I'm like, yeah, I'm not just a ball of hate,
I'm not just a ball of hate. That's the quote from this whole thing tonight. Is gonna be, I'm not just a ball of hate. No, that's dope. Okay, cool. So moving on, we're going back into wine here. So we're talking about Georgia. Jordan's gonna put the map up of Georgia. For those of you guys who are not familiar, we're north of Turkey and Armenia, and we're south of Russia. Okay. East of the Black Sea. And there's a tiny little country called Georgia, in case you haven't picked up. And in particular, the two wines that we're tasting today are coming from like the southeastern portion from a region called Kakheti. I don't know if I pronounced that right. I don't know if I'm gonna pronounce any of this stuff right, but we're gonna chat about that. All right. So for those of you who haven't done it yet, pour yourself a glass of the white wine, the Rkatsiteli Mtsvane. This is well, hang on, let me back up. Drew, tell us about the winery and what makes it so special.
Okay, so Georgian wine in general is very special. It is now officially based off of old like ceramics and stuff like that. Like, this has been designated as the birthplace of wine. So this history goes back 8,000 years of wine production in in this region. And Georgia was right in the middle of the Silk Road. So tons of people came through it. It was also conquered by literally everybody. And so, its wine was able to stretch out, but also because of that, a lot of the time their crops were decimated, right? So a conquering people come in, like let's say like Genghis Khan comes in and goes, "Oh, these mean something to you?" They're like, "Yeah, we love those." They're like, "Great, let's burn them to the ground." And that happened time and time again. And so what the people of Georgia ended up doing was, when these invading hordes would come in, they would take pieces of the vine and they would actually go up into the mountains, because on the north side of the country are this huge mountain range that actually separates them and Russia, and actually kept Russia at bay for most of its existence. And they would go up into these mountains, hide out up there, and then when they would get done pillaging and stuff, they'd go back down, they'd replant the grapes and stuff like that. So you don't have, like, despite this like super long history, you don't have these very old vines. And then about 225 years ago, the Russians started coming down, started getting over those mountains, and started really to mess with the Georgian people. And then that really came to a fever pitch when the Soviet Union was started in 1921. And although Georgia became the preferred wine of the Soviet Union because Stalin was from Georgia, a lot of the vineyards were ripped out, and then they took them, because again, like, communism comes in, takes everything away from all these farmers and these wine producers and stuff like that, and like nationalizes it. And there was only a few vineyards that survived that. This vineyard that we're drinking these wines from is one of those vineyards, and it's just some of the oldest vines that you're going to find in Georgia. So despite having 8,000 years of history, this one, on the Saperavi, which we'll do next, there's some 80-year-old vines that are in that, and then the one that we're starting with is around 50. So which is great. I mean, that's a pretty healthy amount of time. But that's really what ends up, kind of like, that's like the first distinguishing factor when it comes to this. Now, and this is made by the same family, both wines, and I'm gonna do the same thing. Like, I'm still working on my pronunciations with this stuff.
That's okay.
And so what you have here is Gogi and Timur Dokashui, father-son team. Gogi is one of the most well-respected winemakers in all of Georgia. He started numerous brands. They're still huge today. And then this was this side project that he started with his son, where he wanted to move away from the industrialization of wine production that he had gotten so used to during the Soviet Union, and what has really dominated most of the region for the past, even when they got their independence in 91. I mean, it was still a major part of it. So he wanted to start going back to the traditional ways of making wine, which I'm sure we'll get into. But this is his project. So it's a father-son project. And it's this really beautiful blend of tradition and modern techniques and things like that. And it's this family affair where it's, you just have fourth and fifth generation winemakers producing just the coolest stuff, and using grapes that have been very popular, like, the Saperavi, again, which we'll do next. Like, that's the top grape in Georgia, and they have 525 recorded varietals in Georgia. They come back. So it's just nuts, and they're continuing to find stuff and things like that. So it's pretty, it's pretty crazy. And then with the Dila-o that we're going to start with, this is a wine that is going to, like Tesh had mentioned, this is a 50-50 blend of the Rkatsiteli and the Mtsvane. And so those both go into a Qvevri, and Qvevri is this underground clay pot that they actually do this open vat fermentation with, and then it does about 30 days of skin contact. So if you guys are looking at your glass, you'll see that it has this really beautiful amber color to it. So here in the States, you're seeing the trends of like natural wine and stuff like that really start to pop up. And they'll call this like orange wine. And I do have some of the things in my portfolio that are a little bit more orange, but the preferred term in Georgia is amber. So that's what you're gonna see there. And the reason that they did that was because, you know, anytime that you have more skin contact, it's gonna lengthen the life of the wine, right? And so typically when these wines were being consumed, it was in celebrations and stuff like that. So they would open up these qvevris, which, you know, could have anywhere between, you know, you could have like 100-liter qvevri all the way up to a 4,000-liter qvevri. And so when you open those things up, it's, you know, you're kind of like, all right, like anytime that you open up a bottle of wine, like the clock's ticking. So if we're going to do all these, you know, celebrations and these feasts and stuff like that, we got to start drinking it. It's got to last. And so the preferred drink in Georgia is going to be something like this. It's going to be an amber wine that kind of goes with everything. Like Tesh, I know you recommended doing like a stew with this stuff. And, you know, how many times are you doing a white wine with a stew? Like you're just not. Yeah. So to be able to do it like this way, I think is really cool and fun. So that's what I really, really dig about this stuff. And it's such a unique flavor profile as well. I mean, again, you're adding very, very, very minimal sulfites to this as well. And then the difference between this one and the other one is this is going to get 30 days, you know, in the qvevri. Well, then it's moved to steel tanks where it's going to continue to kind of hang out and stuff together for another 4 to 5 months. And then that's when the Saperavi will go into those. And that's how they're kind of able to keep the prices low on this. But it's a really, really fun expression. And it kind of, you know, I think it checks a lot of boxes for people, you know.
It does. It's such a versatile wine, right? Like when you guys, for you guys who are out there who are watching and you picked up the wines and you are tasting it currently, like for me on this wine, there's a ton of melon and cantaloupe, but then has a really nice like backbone of acidity. And then the biggest thing is texture. The wine has texture. It has a little bit of grippiness to it, right? So like, why would I recommend a beef stew for a white wine? It's because of the texture. It can actually stand up to something like beef stew. Really, I recommended the beef stew because of the Saperavi, which we'll get to in just a minute. And for those of you who made a beef stew and you are doing the pairing tonight, I don't know what recipe you guys used, but the one that I use involves wine. So I actually used a little bit of the Saperavi in it. I'm a firm believer that if the wine is not like outrageous, you should use the same wine in your cooking as you are going to be pairing with, because they are going to come together and meet somewhere in the middle when you put them together. So I used a cup of the Saperavi in my beef stew, and it turned out amazing. I already ate, but it turned out amazing. But the Rkatsiteli and the Mtsvane as a 50-50 blend, I think is so unique. And the style, this particular style, I would say, is very user-friendly, right? Like you don't have to be a super wine geek to really appreciate this wine. You can taste this wine and just be like, oh my gosh, this is really good on its own. I'm sure it'll go great with food, but this isn't an overly complicated wine in that it's like so geeky that like you'll only appreciate it if you drink wine constantly. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think that's something important to point out. Like so much of what Georgian drinking culture is, you know, about drinking, eating, celebrating, singing, you know, sharing poems and stuff like that. Like one of those really interesting notes is, you know, in their capital city, which is, you know, been burnt to the ground like 19 times, the streets are not named after like former political leaders or kings or something like that. They're named after poets of Georgian culture. And so it's something they put a huge emphasis on. And when I ask, you know, people who know a lot more than I do about this, about the
you know a lot, man. You got to stop saying that.
But like with the pairings, you know, it's like the pairings, like the concept of, you know, wines that should be just drunk by themselves or have to be paired with specific things. It's such a foreign concept to Georgian drinkers because they're just kind of like, what are you talking about? You only
drink wine and we eat food.
Yeah, it's like this is something that you should be able to crush with literally everything, and they're just kind of like no, this goes with all the food. Like this is the point of this, is that you're going to be able to drink this. So they look at, they're like, can I drink this for 4 hours as I eat, sing, and tell stories of lore and stuff like that? You're like, absolutely. And what I really love about this lineup is, so they have 3 different levels within this winery. The first level is the Guardians, and the Guardians is this really cool product they came out with, where they take indigenous grapes, but then they put it through modern techniques. So it's still fermentation and stuff like that. They don't use the Quivevery at all. This one is kind of like that mix, right? So you get some Quivevery on it, but then you also get steel, so it's kind of like that transition wine. And then when we get to the Saperavi, like that one's like, start to finish, 100% Georgian style, historical, significant style. And so that's what I really love about this one. I was so excited, like, when we did that tasting together, this was the first one that we tasted. And then we went on this like crazy journey into all these different things. And you're like, I gotta tell you, I'm going back to number 1. And I'm like, hey, I'm happy to sell any of these things, because what that means is it gives us a forum like this where we get to talk about just this incredibly rich history and this really cool stuff that not that many people know about, and that's what I love about my job, is that I can take things that have amazing stories, but ultimately at the end of the day, they have to taste good. Like if this doesn't taste good, none of this matters, right?
Right. It's like, hey, the wine is natural. That's cool, right? But generally speaking, not all natural wines are good.
Right. Well, it's funny. I ordered a bunch of my own wines through you last week, which
Yeah.
I'm very aware of. But so I think I ordered like 4 or 5, some of them that I knew that I loved, and then a couple that I was like, oh, I haven't had these yet, so I'm ordering them, and we'll drink them at Thanksgiving. And so I got all these different ones and tried this new one. And we poured it out, and it still seemed like it was going through fermentation, right? Like there was like almost like this fizz to it and things like that. And then so I look at it, I smell it, I'm like, oh, I don't know about this. And the week before, my father had been over at my house, and we had a couple wines that had gone bad, and then and then one that I had corvined, and it was just it wasn't good to go. And so I had dumped it, and that broke his brain. He was like, how did you just dump out a full bottle of wine? And I was like, well, that was $5, so it's okay. Like I just was trying it tasted every bit of a $5 wine. So then on this one, I was like, he's like, hey, if you don't like it, make sure I try it before you just dump another bottle of wine out. So I was like, totally understandable. We're going to do that. Try to think. I didn't like it. My mom didn't like it. So I gave it to my dad. He goes, nah, okay, yeah, you can dump that one. So they're not all good. Like, I sell stuff that's not good.
At least they were honest with you.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think anybody in my position that that doesn't recognize that you have bad products in your portfolio is just lying to you. And the thing is,
man, when you're in a wine sales, man, all of your wines are good.
Oh God, I can't believe that. And and it's so funny to watch these people get so bent out of shape when you tell them like, yeah, I don't really like it. They're just kind of like, oh, how dare you? I'm like, do you make it? Like, why are you so mad right now?
Oh man, it's just another thing in your portfolio.
Like, yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, okay, well, I mean, I know who I can sell this to. It's not for me. It's not for the person directly in front of me, but I can find someone else for this. But I always get a kick out of people who take it really personal when you don't like something they sell. You're like, you don't make this, like, you're not, and also it's on quota this week. It won't be next week, and you'll never see it again.
Right. Yeah. There's a reason we're showing it to you, right? Like,
yeah,
for sure. Hey, real quick, I want to give a quick shout out to I'm going to do a sidebar here. Jen, good job. You should always cook with the wine that you're drinking / eating together. Like, yeah, cook with wine. Pardon me. Real quick, I wanted to give a shout out to my cousin Clarence and my sister-in-law, Jamie. They run a little restaurant in San Francisco called Cafe La Tazita. Follow them on Instagram. Follow them on Facebook. They make dope food. I know this because I went and visited and ate there pre-COVID. And they will actually do orders from the restaurant in San Francisco, and they'll deliver to Vallejo and Fairfield. So if you're over in that area, check them out. They have incredible food. I was actually pretty jealous because they have an order coming, I think on the 10th, I think. And it's like not a date that works for me to like drive to Fairfield to meet up with them, but they have incredible food and they're good people. So show them some love. For those of you who are following along with the wines, pour yourself the Saperavi and we'll move into that because it is bomb. So this is the one that Drew poured for me and I was like, whoa, like timeout. This is Georgian wine, one. And this is also quote unquote natural wine. I don't know why I say quote unquote, it's natural wine. But this is the one that like I tasted and I was like, dude, this is really good, like really good. And so far the feedback from a lot of you guys who have picked up a bottle or two of this has been unanimous. Everybody's just like, dude, that Saperavi is insane. So Drew, tell us about Saperavi. You mentioned earlier that this is like 80-year-old vines, right?
Yeah, 50 to 80. It's, they have about 3 hectares that they own, which is roughly 7.5 acres they have. But what they've done is they've contracted with other families, like long-term contracts, to keep their grapes growing. Because it's not necessarily the most lucrative business to be in Georgian wine right now. So people could, rip out their vines and start making other stuff. But yeah, the Saperavi is for sure the heavy hitter of the Georgian wine lineup. What makes this grape really cool is, obviously when you're talking red wine, like, that the skin of most red wine is going to be red, right? But then
I'm really confused. Time out, back up.
Okay, so you have that, but the thing that with Saperavi is the pulp is red too. Like it's a very deep red, and so it they use it for like dyeing clothes and stuff like that, and it tends to grow quite a bit. And one of the things that's really cool about Georgia is it has like all these different terroirs that play into it. Like they really have like this climate that just ticks all these different boxes depending on what part of the country that you're in. And again, kind of coming back to like the storytelling and stuff like that, Georgia was one of the first countries to really embrace Christianity and stuff. So it's a huge part of the lore when it comes to the consumption and production of these different things. And one of my favorite stories is like their story of creation. And so basically what happened was, God told people, he's like, hey, everybody show up to my house on Friday at noon or at 6, whatever time. I'm going to assign you places to live, right? And of course, the Georgians were late, which is, I guess, something that they're known for. Like, it's just like they're on Georgian time. I guess it's similar to like, island time if you're in Hawaii.
It's a real thing.
Yeah, it's a real thing, and so it's very prominent in Georgia. So the Georgians show up to the party late, and God's like, "Where you been, Georgians? Like we've already handed stuff out." They're like, "Sorry, God, like." We were drinking and celebrating in your honor today, and we got lost with time, but we're here now. So, we're sorry, but we were drinking and celebrating in your honor. And he goes, I really appreciate that. So I have this little piece of land that I was going to save for myself, but I'm going to give it to you. So it really that's how they view the place that they live, is that this country was built for God himself, and then he gave it to the Georgians because they like to party.
That is a great story, dude.
Yeah, and it's so fun, and there's so many different like stories that exist within the Georgian culture and stuff, and and again how much these vines mean to them. So if another example is that like I've mentioned a couple of times, like they got conquered by everybody, but what the soldiers would do is they would weave vines within their chainmail. And so that way, no matter where they were fighting, they were always close to home. And then, but that also worked in another way where they would take their favorite vines and take them into battle. And if they came home and they had seen that, okay, once again, someone just ripped out all of our vines, boom, I have this one, let's replant it. So they would take that with them. So there was some practical things. And then, so now this basically like, was to kind of set the stage for the Saperavi. So I'm not just like rambling for a reason. But so the Qvevri, again, is this big clay pot that is not meant to stand on its own. It is meant to go into the ground. And that is where people are going to ferment and then also keep that skin contact. As you guys are probably familiar with modern wine techniques, is winemakers are constantly tasting their wine during the process, right? Where is this at? How does it taste? Do I need to add anything to it? All of that intervention happens before in the fields and stuff like that, the maintaining.
It's
And even
all about the farming, right?
yeah, they really are. And even to a certain point, like I was listening to a couple different interviews with another guy who was a winemaker in Georgia, and his vineyards are completely overgrown with weeds and green beans and stuff like that, but then also these really beautiful stuff. And when they were talking to him about it, they're like, well, why do you let it kind of just go like that? Like, you're making the grape kind of suffer because it's losing all these nutrients to other things. He's like, well, a part of it is laziness. I don't want to take everything out. He goes, but then another part is that when I taste the wine, it tastes good. So like, well, who cares? And then it's got me thinking about, when we're watering vineyards and stuff, one of the things that is always emphasized is, they get very little water. And what winemakers are trying to do and farmers are trying to do,
right?
Yeah, they're trying to, build that thing up. So if you can imagine that if we're just depriving the vines, in our modern sense of water and how much better it makes them, could you imagine what grapes are like if they have to fight for every nutrient that they get?
Right.
It's going to be so much sweeter. And that's really when it comes to this Saperavi and the fact that these are some of the oldest vineyards in Georgia, that's what you're getting. You're getting this grape that is constantly been fighting against the elements. And then when it goes into the Qvevri, it gets sealed, and it's sealed in there for 6 months. And Gogi doesn't touch it. As much as he wants to touch it, his feeling is like, if I want to do this in the traditional way, I can't touch it. I have to leave it alone. So it goes into that Qvevri and it stays there, and they don't taste it until they pop that thing 6 months later. Now the timelines come from a variety of different reasons. Typically after harvest, what they immediately go into is Lent. And so they would make all the wine, and then it would go into they go into Lent, where they would give up drinking. Now, obviously not everybody in Georgia does that, but it was kind of out of it was like this weird thing of out of ceremony. They're like, okay, well, we're not gonna be able to touch it, so we'll just seal it. We'll just leave it in there, and then in 40 days or more so 50 days, we'll pop it open. And then when we do our feasting and stuff like that, that's when we'll start drinking it and stuff like that. And so what they found was, with white wines, you want to try to limit its oxygen exposure early on, right? Mm-hmm. But with these amber ones, they found that if you expose them at the very beginning and then, close everything back up, that actually builds up kind of like I guess for lack of a better term, like a tolerance for oxygen. And so it came, kind of like this practicality of working with these Qvevris and stuff like that. And then when it comes to something like a Saperavi, this is a wine that the intention of Gogi is that you can lay this down for 15 years and it's only going to get better. And you have, but at the same time, like the one that I'm drinking is a 2018. So, you can drink it now and have this really beautiful experience, or you can lay this thing down and not touch it for a while and, have another really great one. And that's kind of the point of it. And these things are they're big, they're bold wines, that you're able to do that, which is super fun.
I love the range of this wine, right? Like it just has so much going on, like cherry, cassis, and then it like dives into like this like really nice like undertone of like leather and dark chocolate.
Yeah, I think the fun thing that that like Kristen Claire will appreciate this is that he's always trying to get me to decant my wines, and I like to joke that I decant in my belly. That's where I decant.
Right.
And, but with this one, it really does transform him. And what's great about the Orgos is that they're still kind of like this introductory kind of taste profile to it, because you've had some of the other ones with me, and I've already gotten to a point where like I'm like really drinking these really crazy other Georgian wines that like there's no filtration on them whatsoever. Like you have one glass and like your teeth are immediately purple. Like it's just
Right.
or one sip even, because there's so much body in it and there's so much going on. But like I love this one because I still feel like it's definitely a rev up from what we're used to drinking, but ultimately, like to your point, there's enough familiar elements to it. It's super fun. It's easy to drink, and then this is a really great wine to drink with other people. Again, kind of coming back to the whole celebration thing with Georgian wine.
Yeah.
It's all about the experience and sitting around and kind of being like, okay, I'm getting this now. Like, what are you getting? Like, what are you getting? And it's overall, it's just really, really cool and beautiful experience. And I mean, and again, like you tease me with something that's weird and unique and has a cool backstory. Like I'm 1,000% in. And then, the cherry on top is that it tastes really good. And that's ultimately what matters. And I just, it's just such a fun bottle. And I was really, really happy. And, the thing is, like, I know some people are doing the beef stew at home. When we had this originally, we were at South eating fried chicken. So it goes with everything.
It goes with everything, to your point, right? And it did. And it was great with fried chicken.
Yeah.
It was.
So that's just like the fun stuff. And my hope with any of this stuff is that people just kind of open their minds up. I mean, I think one of the most frustrating things for any salesperson is when you can't sell something, but like when you hear people that are so caught up in like, oh, we only can only sell California stuff here. It's like, California stuff is great, but this stuff is also great and it's affordable, and I think that's the thing that a lot of people don't take into consideration. Like this is coming from this tiny country in Eastern Europe that's, off the Aegean Sea. It's like, and it's only, X amount of dollars. Like, are you kidding me? Like, how does that work? How does that get to this point? And we're able to make people experience this brand new country for a really affordable price. Like, it's awesome.
Totally. And to that point, right? I mean, I was doing some research, and I found out that like in 2006, there was only something like 81 registered wineries in Georgia. And then in 2018, there was like close to like 1,000 or something. It was like 961 or some preposterous number for the amount of time. But like, I think one of the reasons is that we're now finding out just now, really, in these last few years, that hang on, real quick, time out. We're finding out in these last few years, don't let me lose that thought. For those of you who are asking, where's your glass of wine? Go to winewithtesh.com and order some, goddammit. Okay. I'm happy to share glasses with you, but I got to pay for the wine, so you got to order it. For like the last like 10, 15, 20 years, I feel like Georgian wine, and especially I feel like in the last few years in the States especially, Georgian wine didn't really have the recognition that it maybe deserved. You know what I mean? There's a wine called Yakubian Hobbs, and it's a collaboration between the Yakubian family and Paul Hobbs, who is a very famous Pinot Noir winemaker here in California. And that wine is from Armenia. And very, very unique, very delicious wine. And that's an example of like one of the many reasons why like Armenian wines and Georgian wines are starting to gain a lot more traction, is because you have people who are sharing and talking about it, kind of like we're doing today, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's what it comes down to. It's just, for better or worse, like I have a reputation for bringing weird shit to the table, and most of the time it's good stuff. So people are willing to roll the dice on something that I kind of throw my support behind. And my thing now is like, I'm trying to track down Georgian wines that I have nothing to do with. I just want to drink them because they're so good, and they're hard to find. And and to the number about kind of the increase of over 1,000 wineries. What's really funny is most wine production was happening within people's homes. That's where most wine production was happening.
Yeah, nobody made it official until they realized that like the world wants this wine.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, and and so much of that had to do with the Soviet Union and stuff like that. I mean, like I said, Stalin was a huge fan of Georgian wine. He was, again, he was from Georgia. He reportedly, I'm trying to remember if I'm getting this right. It's going to sound preposterous, but it's definitely a thing. And it was, he would go through 100 bottles of wine a week. And so when you think about it, like, well, yeah, if they're sending 100 bottles to the Kremlin, like that seems like enough, but it's like, it was just for him. And he had, and I don't want to talk about Stalin in any like rosy terms whatsoever. It's a very slippery slope. I just want to clarify, he was a horrible person. However, the man could drink. And his requirement for everybody around him was
you gotta clarify everything.
Yeah, was that everybody else had to drink around him too, to the point where a lot of his, I don't know what the term is in Russia, but part of his cabinet, like they would tell like the servants and stuff like that, like, give him wine, give us water that's dyed red, because we can't keep up with him. But he gets pissed, and obviously he had a temper. So we wanted to make sure we do that.
Oh shit.
Yeah. And so, what ended up happening is like that, again, with communism and stuff like that, is people really took all their wine production, were doing it, at home, and, and really kind of like this, the dead of night, and not really tell people. And as it started to grow and stuff like that, and like, I mean, we deal with both. We deal with stuff that's mass produced, and we deal with these really small families as well. You see people that grew up on this stuff, and then you see people who are trying to revive this thing. I mean, again, coming back to Gogi, like he's one of the most well-respected winemakers in the world. He worked underneath, the Soviet Union at one point. And, but in terms of his own brand, that 2012, and he's one of the best out there. 2012 was when he got started.
It's so young. We think about like, we think of like, oh man, if a winery opened in 2012, it's like, oh, it hasn't been around that long, right? But clearly the guy knows his stuff.
Right. And I think I think one of the cool things about it being so young and so new is that, or one of the things that I get a kick out of is like, if you get into this wine now, like, first of all, you're going to be drinking good stuff. So congratulations there. You did it. You're drinking good wine. Mm-hmm. The second thing is like, you really become a flag bearer for this tiny nation who has this amazing, rich history, that you get to be on the ground floor. You get to be part of the building blocks. And I always like to be that person who's kind of, ahead of the trends and likes to drink things that maybe not necessarily everybody's drinking, but if someone comes to my house, or when we can do that again, and things like that, like I can show people like, hey, like check out how dope this is. Like this is really cool. And that, again, that rabbit hole just goes further and further down. And I mean, we're talking about 525 different varieties. At this point, I've had 9, maybe.
Right.
Like, I have a lot of work to do.
Scratch the surface.
Yeah.
I mean, this is just the stuff that's being imported.
Right. Oh, absolutely. And that's the thing.
What they're making that's like not even imported.
Yeah.
Like cool and geeky and fun.
Well, and to prove that it's such a big point, and I could have told you this sooner, because you can get listed on their website as well, is like the Georgian government takes this very seriously. So if you're a retailer in the US that sells Georgian wine, they will put you on their official government website, which is bonkers, right? Could you imagine the US doing any like sales pitch for you?
Am I on a Georgian website?
I have to follow up with them and get you on there. But yes, you will be listed on, like, because it's not a huge group of people, but people are looking for Georgian wine. So
that's a trip.
Yeah. So again, like you're one of the first 100 members on a small band page, waiting for your guys to make it big. Like that's what you saw these dudes perform at 5 o'clock on a Saturday night. So
right.
So it's just so cool. And I think also if you fancy yourself like a history buff at all, I mean, it's like the history of that region is bananas. Like
it is.
Whether you're talking about it historically or even in the modern sense with like the Soviet Union and the things that happened with that, there's just really cool stuff. There's really great interviews out there. There's a great book called For the Love of Wine. Actually, hold on, it's closer than I thought it was.
Oh, do you have it?
I do. So this is also what a Qvevri looks like if we didn't pull one up at any point. That's so you can see it's not meant to stand on its own. It has to go in the ground or that shit topples over. But yeah, it's just there's so much cool stuff that comes with it. I mean, and again, like I'm excited to experience it.
Who's the author of the book?
Alice Faring, which I probably butchered that as well, but she's a food writer and has a couple other good books too. And it's great because it weaves in some of her personal life with also like her experience in Georgia and experience in these wines, and kind of at a time when like there was one story that she mentions in there where they go to a wine festival in France, and they bring one of the winemakers with them, and they're asking, like they're talking to different people, and they're like, well, what makes up the terroir of Georgian wine? And again, like this is so much of Georgian wine is just like mom and pop things, right? Like there's no thought process put into it. This is just what we do. It's like, well, why do you make it like this? Because that's how great grandma made it. Like, why are you asking me this stupid question? And so
that's a ridiculous question. That's just how we make it.
This is how we make it. Like, why would we do it anywhere else? And then, you start to do the science, you're like, well, this is why this makes sense scientifically. But when it comes to this, and so this guy's asking him about terroir, and he's like, the terroir is made up of my ancestors' blood, like that's what my terroir is. And I just think that's so metal. And, it's like super cool that this is what they do. And again, it's a really interesting region. And it's one of those places that is like, has become like, when we're allowed to travel again, is like one of like, a top 3 place that I need to go to. It's not even wanting, it's like, I need to go here. I need to experience this place that is just, supposed to be incredible. And every picture I've seen, like the way that people talk about it, like I'm going to like every Georgian wine seminar I can go to now. It's hilarious. And in fact, we're doing another one on Friday. So if anybody wants to contact me after and come to it, you're more than welcome to. I think it's at like 9 or 10 in the morning.
What's your Instagram handle?
Instagram handle is dgarrison6. So DGARRISON 6. So yeah, definitely check me out on that. You can send me a note. I'll send you an invite to the meeting, and you can learn from people who like really know their shit, that like live and breathe this stuff. But again, I think it ticks a lot of boxes for a lot of people. Like they're very open about their process. There's not a whole lot of chemicals involved. There's a tremendous movement for female winemakers within as well. And it's really kind of cool to see that grow. And then for a lot of them, like you have your legends in the industry like anything else, but there's a lot of shared information that's kind of going on, and because they want this to be a big deal. They've really moved past the Soviet Union. They've moved past that communism, and now they're trying to establish themselves. Like, they want to be known as the birthplace of wine. They want to be known to have these really amazing varietals, and a lot of resources and a lot of time are going in to make that happen. And I think that's cool. There's so much emphasis on negative shit in this world right now that, a country that's just kind of like, you want to talk about wine? No. Are you sure you don't want to talk about wine? Because that's what we want to talk about.
Right.
It's cool, man. And it's fun. And again, like you said, we've scratched the surface in terms of what's available to us and things like that. And I know that I'm excited to continue to go down this path, and and to do that with people like you and the people that have joined at various times tonight and experiencing it. Like, it's just, Georgian wine is just, it's so rad. It's so much fun. There's just there's so much to experience within it that, I mean, I'm thrilled about it every single day that somebody wants to talk about it.
Well, thank you for taking time to talk to us about it and give us so much history about the wines, right? Because I know that you geek out on that stuff. And I know for a fact that you've done a lot more reading on Georgian wines than I have. So I appreciate you making time. And I hope you guys who are out there, I haven't heard any really comments today. So how was the food pairing? How did you like the white wine? How did you like the red wine? How did it treat you guys? Did you pair it with the Snickers bar? And did it work?
Show up? You know, like did anybody actually want to see it?
Right. Yeah. And for those of you who weren't able to purchase the wines, these are wines that I plan on continuing to carry. So hit up winewithtesh.com. It'll be there. I try and keep a couple of things rotational, but these are wines that I think that are just so unique and so different from what we're used to, but still delicious, that I want to continue to support them. Also, Drew, let me know how much we need to sell for Georgian Winehouse to send us to Georgia, because I want to travel too.
It's funny that there was one point where they so I've been with JVS for 3 years, 3.5 years, something like that, and there was one point where they did set up like kind of like an internal sales competition where whoever sold the most got to go to Georgia, and at the time I hadn't really jumped into too many of them or talked to our supplier about the Georgian wines. And so I was just kind of, I was like, how the hell am I ever going to do this? Like, how am I ever going to get to this point?
Right.
And then, but now I look at it like, oh my God, like I would dedicate so much time to making that a reality because I love these wines so much. And so hopefully that like comes back around again, because I do think it's a possibility. And again, this is a major priority, not only for the importer and the supplier of this wine, but for the country itself. Like they want this to work. They want people to be excited about Georgian wine. And again, if there's any wine that's worth taking a flyer on, and I don't know the prices off the top of my head on your site, but it's like, this is the stuff. These are the things that you should be dropping that extra dollars on, not really knowing. I mean, and I can tell you for sure, Tesh is not going to recommend anything that is not good. So stop asking him that question.
Y'all keep killing me with that question, man. You're like, yo, is this wine good? I'm like, motherfucker, I got like 16 SKUs. Like, yeah. They're all fucking good.
So it's like, and if you knew my portfolio, you knew my background, like the fact that he only has 16 SKUs, but some of mine are in it, like should tell you how good these wines are. Because it's definitely not one that, or something as I'm trying to build, it's been fun. But again, like whether it's through like this book or just experiencing the wines, or again, like hit me up, send me a message. I'm always down to talk any booze, but I'm definitely on a Georgian wine kick right now. And I can't get enough. Oh, and the best thing is, with it being natural and avoiding a lot of like barrel contact and stuff like that, so far, I've been able to put down a lot of bottles and I feel great the next day. So I'm not saying that it's impossible to get a hangover on it. I'm just saying I haven't had one yet. And there was one night where I drank 6 bottles with like 2 other people. So math, 2 bottles each. You can get buck wild with this stuff. So do that.
Yeah, do that. Drink more Georgian wine. If you guys are enjoying the bottles as much as I am, you have a QR code on your bottle. Scan it, order some more. Drew, thank you again for making time, man.
Of course.
I appreciate you. I really especially appreciate your enthusiasm about the subject matter.
Yeah, thank you, man. I appreciate that.
Well, I mean, like, like it's one thing to like have people on, but it's like another people like this is really important to me. For those of you who have seen my guests in the back, or in the past, I should say.
In the back, I was like, in the back.
In the past. For those of you who have seen my guests in the past, it's really important for me to have guests. If I'm going to have guests, I want to have guests who are like really, really passionate or excited and fun to chat with about this stuff, right? And who aren't afraid to talk about how Jordan was one of the greatest players to ever walk the planet Earth. So I appreciate you, man. Thank you for making time.
Of course. I'm, like I said, I'm always down to talk. The things that I get behind, I genuinely believe in them. I hope you guys explore the Georgian wines that I sell. I hope you explore Georgian wines that I don't sell. I mean, just try different weird shit. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've tried something from like Lebanon. I'm like, that is rad. Like, I'm gonna drink more of that, because be that person that's pushing the envelope. That's what I'm gonna say.
Lebanese,
try new things and
yeah,
go ahead. You're gonna get burned.
But I was just gonna say, Lebanese wine is fire, man. I'm actually, I got a few bottles that I'm saving for my kids of Lebanese wines that are just bonkers and different, just out of this world. Good. Diana, thank you for the feedback about dinner and stuff. I'm glad that you enjoyed it. I'm glad that the white wine went well with the polenta. And Jen, you got to start ordering some of this good, weird shit. So what else do I got? Drew, thanks again. That's what I got for you. Again, follow Drew D Garrison 6 on Instagram. Check him out. He has an incredible portfolio, and he sells really good whiskey too. One of them that I just got is a bottle of 10th Street single malt. I got it as a part of the Allocation Nation at Roco Wine and Spirits.
Oh, nice.
Again, check out my boy Jordan. Check out his eggnog video, dude. Like, I'm telling you, like, he made that eggnog, and I was like, I'm finna make that right now. I'm probably gonna make it tonight because I just smashed 2 bottles of wine. So I think
Jordan, it was so good to see you, man. Like, I miss your face. You are super talented. You know, I've always enjoyed your videos. I haven't seen the eggnog one now, so I got to go check that out. I don't know how I missed that, but
I threw the link for it up in the comments, so go check those out after the live stream.
Awesome.
Yeah,
awesome.
And good to see you too.
For those of you who follow me and are into this shit, I'm doing it again in 2 weeks, and then we'll take a break because the holidays will be here. But on December 16th, if you go to winewithtesh.com, you click on Wine Talks, you'll have the links for the next 2 wines. I'm going to say this before anybody hits me up in my messages about it. Yes, the next 2 wines are a little bit pricier. Treat yourself, okay? Christmas time, baby. I want you guys to treat yourself, and I want us to have more than an incredible experience. So yes, there is a pricey Riesling, and yes, there is a really pricey Sangiovese, and they're both amazing wines that I'm truly passionate about. I've been drinking both of them for years. Go pick up your wines, and until we see you guys again.
Oh, and hey, if you still have this one.
Oh yes.
Buy this. This is champagne that he also sells.
Yes.
Treat yourself.
That champagne gosset is stupid. Okay. So I'll tell you guys this story since I have you guys. Okay. Why that champagne gosset is so special. I tried it one day after it was open. So the bubbles were pretty much gone. And for me to taste it without the bubbles and be like, holy shit, this is amazing. I know that this was good right when he popped the bottle. It's special. Also, only 406 packs made it into the US.
I don't sell it, for the record. I just told people to buy it, and I don't even sell it. So
he doesn't sell it. So he's no incentive here. It's just really good juice. Okay. Yeah. It is a treat, but it's one of those wines that you can hang on to. You can then drink it on New Year's Eve. You have in Christmas, right? And you're staying at home because we're all supposed to be staying at home. If you're staying at home and you want just a really nice treat, check out the Champagne Gosset. Thank you, Drew, for that plug.
You're welcome. I'm always be selling, baby.
All right, yeah, for sure, man. All right, everybody. Until we see you guys again, 2 weeks, go visit Wine with Tesh. Drew, thanks again. Again, Jordan, thank you for everything that you do for us, man. Appreciate you.
Of course. Thanks, guys.
All right, guys.